So there's about 20 of us in here today, and it feels a little crowded, don't you think? Imagine what it would be like if there were 100, 200, even 300 of us in this room for days on end. That is what it is like for these animals on factory farms. And there are some gruesome images, so just to warn you, if you feel like you need to step out or whatever. Probably should have said that before. So what is factory farming is a system of rearing livestock using intense methods by which poultry, cattle, and hogs are confined indoors under strictly controlled conditions. Up above we have a picture of a factory farm, and below we have a picture of a small family farm. We can clearly see the differences between the two, but the most prominent difference here is that the cattle are raised outdoors on the family farm, and on the factory farm they're raised indoors. What farms are considered to be factory farms? Well, they have to have at least 500 beef or dairy cattle, 1,000 hogs, 100,000 egg-laying chickens, and 500,000 broiler chickens. However, again, that's the minimal amount. Many large-scale factory farms consist of even more animals. There are currently no laws governing the conditions in which these farmed animals are raised. They are unprotected by most state criminal anti-cruelty laws because farming practices are considered to be normal or humane. And they are also omitted from the Federal Animal Welfare Act. However, there are laws governing the conditions of our household pets, but as you look at the screen, do you really see a difference in what we consider food and what we consider a friend? The only federal oversight governing the conditions of these farm animals occur during transportation and slaughter. The 28-hour law takes action during transportation, and this law states that any vehicle transporting animals to a slaughterhouse must stop every 28 hours to allow the animals exercise, food, and water. However, this law is rarely enforced and does not pertain to birds like chickens, who take up 90% of the animals that are slaughtered. And then we have the Humane Methods of Livestock Slaughter Act, which takes action during slaughter. And this law states that animals must be rendered insensible to pain and stunned into unconsciousness prior to slaughter. However, again, it is rarely enforced and does not pertain to birds like chickens and turkeys. So, how did factory farming come to be? It actually started with an accident. In 1926, there was an over-delivery of 450 chicks to a small farm on the Delmarva Peninsula, which is located on the east coast of the United States and is occupied by parts of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. So the farmer and his wife decided to keep the chicks indoors throughout the winter rather than sending them back. And they survived, and 10 years later, the flock had increased to over 250,000. There had also been an increase in desire for huge quantities of cheap product and a popularity gain in the fast food chain. This made farmers want to produce as much product as possible in as little time as possible. It also made them want to save space, labor, and profit. And this is Wendell Murphy. He was a pig farmer himself. In the 80s and 90s, his company had contracted with smaller pig farmers, and they allowed his company to build massive pig sheds on their farms, and they raised pigs for him. So he turned small independent pig farmers into sharecroppers, and they began to raise more pigs than ever before. And today, we're going to focus on 3 types of abuse that are commonly seen in factory farms. We have poor living conditions, physical abuse, and lack of nutrition. I've grown up loving animals, and I've always thought that they should all be treated equally. And next fall, I'm studying pre-veterinary medicine at Stetson University, so that's kind of why I chose to study this topic. So, these animals are crammed by the thousands into small, windowless sheds and stuffed into wire cages, metal crates, and other torturous devices. They will never raise their families, root in the soil, or build nests. Oftentimes the first time they feel the warmth of the sun or breathe fresh air is the day they're loaded onto a truck to be sent to a slaughterhouse. And basically they never do anything that is natural or important to them, like I said before. Up above we see chicks in a cage, pigs in a crate, and cows in a filthy feedlot. As you can see, they barely have enough room to turn around or lay down comfortably, and it also is really dirty, which creates many diseases. And on the bottom we have free-range livestock, and they have plenty of room to roam around, and it looks a lot cleaner. So for physical abuse, Daisy Farms is our nation's largest sour cream manufacturer, and it's located in Paris, Texas. The people for the ethical treatment of animals did an undercover investigation there after receiving a call from a former Daisy employee. And Ben Slogowski, who actually runs the family business, stated that they treated their cows as pets, giving them each a name. But PETA, who did the undercover investigation, found that the animals' treatment was in far different terms. So what went on at Daisy Farms? Employees were seen jabbing their cows with pens and knives. They were also seen hitting them to get them to move. One was seen forcing milk into the respiratory tract of 3 calves, which killed 2 of them. Other calves were seen getting kicked in the head. And a lot of cows were sick with pneumonia and struggling to breathe. And of these sick cows, many had severe diarrhea that scalded their skin. With all of this going on, there should have been some sort of veterinary care involved, but there wasn't. Pig farmers across North America use what is called thumping to render their pigs insensible to pain prior to slaughter, which was an act we talked about earlier. So thumping is when their head is hit over concrete, and then something similar can be used with chickens, and it's called blunt trauma, again, when they're hit over the head. And many times these animals have body parts removed without anesthesia. Cows and pigs will have their tails clipped off and their testicles removed, and cows will have their horns shaved off, and then little baby chicks will have their beaks clipped and their toes cut off. And they actually have to clip the beaks of the chicks, or feel the need to, because when you have thousands of them in a small space, they get aggressive and they pick at each other, which creates open wounds and sores, which get infected, and then you can't sell or make money off of them. And these animals are fed a combination of corn and grain distillers with pre-antibiotics and growth hormones. And this feed doesn't contain the proper nutrients needed for these animals to live healthy lives. They should be eating a green or grass-based diet. However, this feed does allow them to create more product or larger products, and it actually prevents them from getting any diseases that we talked about earlier with their poor living conditions. There are a lot of downfalls to using this type of feed. Many times calves are born too weak to walk, and others have enlarged joints and limb deformities. The cow on the left is a normal grass-fed cow, and the cow on the right was corn-fed with hormones and antibiotics. As you can see, the cow on the left, who was normally fed, has a small, comfortable, normal-looking udder, and the cow on the right has a very large, painful, unnatural-looking udder. And many cows, like this one on the right, get what is called mastitis, which is a painful udder disease due to nutritional imbalances and that kind of stuff. This feed also creates a lot of digestive disorders, from twisted gut, bloating, bloody diarrhea, and other disorders. And so twisted gut occurs when the cow's abomasum fills with gas and it floats to the top of the abdomen, where it becomes twisted. And this is caused by inadequate nutrition. Post-weaning failure to thrive syndrome occurs when healthy piglets are weaned off their mother's milk at too young of an age. So about 5 to 10 days after getting weaned off their mother's milk, the healthy piglets turn gaunt, pale, and anorexic. Basically, they self-cannibalize or break down their own tissues and organs, and then they emaciate and the workers are forced to euthanize them because this is incurable and very painful for the piglets. So today's broiler chickens weigh up to 3 kilograms, which is double the size from 60 years ago. Their breast size has also increased by 80%. And these chickens of 3 kilograms reach this size in about 6 weeks, when it took a chicken in the 50s up to 15 weeks to reach its fully grown but much smaller size. So basically, our chickens today are growing much larger at a much faster pace, which leads to many health problems. Many times, walking from one spot to another becomes a painful task because they're considered front heavy because their breasts are so large, which strains their legs. And then microfractures and degenerate bone disease also add to the list of health problems. And for our egg-laying chickens, naturally, hens lay anywhere from 20 to 30 eggs per year, but our industrial raised hens lay 275 eggs per year, and the amount of calcium needed to lay that many eggs leaves the chickens with brittle bones that are prone to breaking. So why do we use antibiotics? Again, to create more product, like we talked about with producing more eggs, and to create larger product, which we talked about with the increasing of the breast size. And so I thought it was really funny. I got excited earlier during the speaking. So do you guys remember where he said most antibiotics were used? He said farms, right? I was like, yes, that's right. So this actually says that 80% of all the antibiotics sold in the United States are used on factory farms. So only 20% of the antibiotics used are used in hospitals and for human illnesses. And animal activists are people who fight for animal rights. They organize undercover investigations, and in these investigations they record what is going on behind closed barn doors, and they make the videos public so that society can see how these animals are really being treated. These are a few organizations that help to improve animal rights as well. We have the Farm Animal Rights Movement, the Humane League, Animal Equality, and Mercy for Animals. They advocate for animals through massive eye-opening public awareness campaigns and activities. And actually, Mercy for Animals went undercover at a Highline, Iowa egg-laying factory, and they saw that male baby chicks were sent on a conveyor belt that led to a grinder the day they were born because they were of no egg-laying use to customers, so they couldn't make money off of them. So now you're probably wondering, what can you do to help? I'm not asking you to go vegan or become a vegetarian. That's a major change in your lifestyle, but there are a few small things that you can do to help diminish the problem. One thing you can do is support your local businesses and your local farms, buy products from them. Don't give all your money to the corporate businesses and the large-scale factory farms. Another thing you can do is when you are purchasing your items, you can look for labels like this one that state that there were no antibiotics or hormones used on the animals who produce this product. And lastly, you can support an activist group